Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today we have an incredible guest joining us, Richard Friesen. Richard is a seasoned professional with a background in finance, psychology, and neuroscience, making him a powerhouse when it comes to helping individuals and professionals break free from limiting behaviors. He has a unique neuroscience based approach, which he calls the mind muscles model, designed to empower clients to reach their goals by changing ingrained habits that no longer serve them. His wealth of experience ranges from being a futures broker and a successful options trader to founding a financial software company. And today on the Mindful Living podcast, listeners, we'll dive deep into the ways we can recognize and stop these repetitive patterns that hold us back and replace them with behaviors that truly align with our goals and our core values. So, Richard, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor to have you with us today.
And it's an honor to be here. And I look forward to a real creative conversation where we can reframe some of the ways we think so that it reframes our behaviors and our outcomes.
Definitely. So, Richard, with your extensive background in both finance and psychology, how did you first become aware of the repeated behaviors that no longer served you? What was your turning point in addressing them?
Well, the turning point was uh, in the early 90s. I was a market maker on the floors of the Pacific Exchange in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone on my own after, several years working for a large, well-financed arbitrage and
Mm-hmm.
option trading firm. And on my own, I started out very carefully. I made like 150,000 US the first year, or 125, 150, 175, and then 200. Then I got stuck at 200,000. And
Uh-huh.
it was in April of 1995, in the middle of the night, I heard a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the voice said, "Rich, you're only worth 200,000 a year." I woke up, sat up in bed, looked around. There was nobody in the room. My wife was sleeping peacefully beside me. So I got up, I showered, dressed, and drove across the Golden Gate Bridge
Wow.
and went to the exchange. And the exchange had these big, cement columns and
Mm-hmm.
steps. And I sat on the concrete steps and I thought, because the exchange wasn't open yet, and I thought, what was that voice? What was it telling me?
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, I realized I was done with that limiting belief. And so when the doors opened, I went, and they don't have trading pits anymore. You understand, it's all electronic. But in those days, everyone was in this pit, maybe 50 or 100 guys yelling and screaming, buying and selling.
Oh.
So I went and I stood in the best spot in the pit, right in front of the exchange staff, and right in between the two busiest brokers where they always stood.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to understand that those spaces, they're not like reserved for you. You don't buy a space.
Wow.
It's handled by the toughest, the most capitalized, the meanest, the most charismatic. It takes a huge personality
Yeah.
to keep that spot. Well,
Uh-huh.
I stood in that spot, Rich Friesen.
Wow.
And you got to understand, I'm a philosophy major, so I normally stood at the back of the pit and bought a little bit here or sold a little bit there. But now I stood in the center spot, and when the guy who normally stands there came in, he looked at me, he was shocked, and he started a little small talk, and the bell went off, and he tapped me on the shoulder, saying, "Okay, Rich, my spot. I didn't move." We started pushing and shoving, and the exchange staff says, "You guys get into a fight, it's a $10,000 fine for each of you." So I stood there and the bell went off and I started buying and selling. I went crazy. I would scream into the microphone, but I don't want to hurt anybody's ears. Buy 100, sell you 50, buy 20, sold, buy them. And I went on that year to make many times that. And then I started building a trading firm. And some of the traders did very well with my system. Some of them did okay, not great, but okay. But a third of them just couldn't make it. And it occurred to me, what if? What if they had a similar limiting belief? How could I take that voice in the middle of the night and make it intentional? In other words, it happened, kind of just happened to me. I was just done with it. And that voice was kind of the symbol that I was finished with my limits. But how could I make that intentional? Is there a way to create a path to do that? And so I built a trading firm and trained traders who came up with internal limits that with hypnotherapy we were able to overcome. So that's what brought me there and built a trading firm. Then I built a software firm that was eventually bought by Hitachi. And then I thought about the world at large. Maybe not so much in India, but in the United States, we have a very woke culture that has internalized a lot of beliefs about money, success, and wealth that create stress in individuals and prevent us from fully exploring our worth and the value we can deliver to others.
Wow, what a journey, Richard. What a journey.
It was.
Lovely, lovely. What a story. Well, many of us are unaware of the patterns we repeat in our daily lives. So, how can we begin to first identify, become aware, mindful of these behaviors, especially when they have become so ingrained in our routine?
Yes. I think what you've just said was really important, that they've become so ingrained. And if we look at it on a neurological level, we can actually see neural connections that we repeat behaviors, even if they don't serve us, over and over again, and we get neural connections that become just the easy way to react because they're automated. So the question then is, how do we make significant behavioral changes? Now, there's many paths to do this and many layers that we can go down. But one thing that I do with my current clients is I ask them what behaviors no longer serve them. And so they'll give me a behavior such as, I just kind of scroll my phone and don't get the work done. So then I'll say, okay, that's the behavior. And what is the positive intent of that behavior? They'll go, huh? No, it doesn't help me at all. And I'll say, there's in that moment, right in that moment where you have that behavior, what is the positive intent? I can avoid my work. I can avoid tension. I can get away from other people that annoy me. And in that moment, I can just find some internal peace. So what you want is internal peace. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So does doom scrolling on your phone, does that give you the internal peace you're looking for? Well, in the moment it does. Exactly. So how can we expand that moment of internal peace? Because after you're done doom scrolling, do you have peace? No, I beat myself up. I tell myself I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I feel guilty. And then that makes things worse. Okay, so our goal is internal peace. So we start with a positive intent of our current behavior rather than just saying, stop it. What's a positive intent? What do we want? Once we define that, such as internal peace, then we say, okay, how do we achieve internal peace? Now, internal peace is a broad topic, and there's gurus and all sorts of yoga and mindfulness techniques to do this.
Yeah.
And there's just lots of ways to get there. But if we want internal peace, then we look at our internal mindset. So the next thing we look at is what I call the golden keys. First is awareness. In fact, I can do that right now. What am I aware of? Oh, my chest is a little tight. My voice is a little tight. I'm exaggerating now. Oh, so I take a breath. I'm slowing down. My voice is more relaxed. So awareness. And the next step is acceptance. Do I beat myself up for talking too fast or being too excited? No, I say, okay, I'm excited because this is a great show and I'm delighted to be on it. So I'm all excited. So awareness, I just did a body check, my physiology, my emotions, my thoughts, then acceptance, and then I can say, oh, Rich Friesen, what do you want now? Well, what I want is to have a great conversation. I want to be relaxed. I want to connect with your listeners. And I want to do it in a way that, well, gives people more internal peace.
That is great. That is great. And in your work with clients, Richard, what role does neuroscience play in helping them stop these repeated behaviors? If you can explain how understanding our brain's wiring helps in breaking these habits.
So once we understand that our old habits are often created by our survival mechanisms. For example, in my life, I had a mom who was cold and not very affectionate. So as a result, I tend to repeat that in my life. That I know how to survive that. So what I do is I create situations like that. I know how to survive them because my neural connections are all built around that particular behavior and survival mechanism. So once I understand that, say, okay, now, what do I want now? And so we look at the survival mechanisms, we examine them with my clients, and we see, and I ask, well, does this survival mechanism, does it serve you now as an adult? And the answer is always, oh, no, not really. So we say, okay, how can we expand our lives so that we can step out of the survival mechanism and get what we want? And then that becomes an interesting conversation. So now the question is, in that moment where you're picking up the phone to do some doom scrolling, or you're taking that drink of alcohol, or you lose control of your temper and yell at your kids, whatever the behavior is, in that moment, you are going to do what feels better. So how can we set it up so that it feels better to create a new behavior that gives you exactly what you want rather than a survival mechanism that ultimately is a failure for getting what you want? And that's the trick. So I work with my clients to set it up so right in that moment where we feel our temper going, or we're going to take that drink or doom scroll on the phone, oh, wow, it feels better to put that glass down because I now can experience my power, my self-ability to determine my future and the way I want to live my life. Wow, this is a victory. This feels better. So I'm constantly encouraging and inviting my clients to step in a world that feels better in the moment rather than discipline, willpower. Stop it. Just quit. Stop. So if it's a discipline, I'm setting up an internal struggle that goes on for all your life. But imagine what if Rich Friesen invites you into a state that feels better in that exact decisive moment.
Wow, that is thoughtful. Okay, so some people argue that repeating certain behaviors can actually provide a sense of stability and security, even if those are limiting. How would you respond to someone, Richard, who feels that holding on to old habits is safer and secured than stepping into the unknown?
Well, that's a really good point, Sana, that what you bring up is a critical piece of how we move forward and change because the survival mechanisms, how we've survived in the world, our current behaviors are all comfortable because we know we can manage them and handle them.
Mm-hmm.
But to try to say, I'm going to step into something new that I don't know that I can handle, or
Mm-hmm.
that importantly, that my peer group or my parents or my religion I will be ostracized or shunned or excluded. To step into that new world is really a challenge to most of us. So, what I do is I create guided visualizations of stepping into the new world. And I use a metaphor of a house, creating a house that's the new world and the rooms in it. And then, as this is like an hour or 2 hour guided visualization, but as they approach the house and are ready to step into their new world, I have
Mm-hmm.
them look back. Who is objecting? You know, the parents, siblings, employers, employees, religion. Not who's going to object to you stepping into your new world? And we'll say, well, Paul will. Well, Paul's been my good buddy and he drinks. And if I stop drinking,
Mm-hmm.
I'll lose his friendship. Or my religious community or my relatives who say that wealth is bad, rich people are awful if I start making some money. So then we have conversations with each of them on their objections. And we realize that some of them, those objections are just imagined. And some of them, and then they disappear on the conversation. Others, we can learn to set boundaries. So say, okay, I understand your belief system. I am developing a new belief system that I believe will serve me better, serve my children and my family better. And I recognize the difference and I still want to maintain a relationship. And if they're not unable to do that, then to move forward, we need to let some people go.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, you emphasize joy and grace in your work. How do these elements play a role in helping someone not only stop their old behaviors, but also replace them with healthier, more productive habits?
Yeah, our emotional state is is a prime controller of our decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So the golden keys, which are awareness,
Mm-hmm.
is really important. So what I've come up with a concept to help is what I call our emotional beliefs. In other words, I have some beliefs that I know are absolutely true. Rich Friesen is the one person in the world that knows the absolute positive truth about X, Y, or Z. I mean, Sana, you could argue with me or whatever, but I know the truth. So, what do I do with that?
Mm-hmm.
In reality, Rich Friesen is just one person out of billions with one experience, a very narrow experience of the world culturally. So I know rationally that I can't know the truth. In fact, I've been through several absolute truths in my life. When at each point I thought I had it. Oh, but then I moved on. So if I look at my truth as being an emotional truth
Mm-hmm.
and allow me to have it, and then be able to step outside of it to say, okay, that's Rich's current emotional truth. Then what I can do is allow myself to have it, but also understand that other people have emotional truths and that we can allow those to be and still create a great relationship and have joy without guilt.
Mm. So, there's a belief that trying to change ingrained behaviors. It requires extreme effort and discipline, and many people give up in the process. How to
Yes.
address this belief that changing deep seated habits is simply too difficult for the average person?
Yes, I had a client. It was a financial client, and was making dumb financial moves. But he said, one of the things that I don't do is I don't go running in the morning. I think
Uh-huh.
about it and I don't. So I said, okay. And then you beat yourself up. Yeah. And then yell at myself and I think bad things about myself when I don't. Okay. So could you do this? In the morning when you're sitting at the table, take
Mhm.
your running shoes and just put them beside you on the floor. Could you do that? Oh, well, I guess so. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, don't go running. Don't put them on just for a week. Just put them beside you on the floor. Okay, I can do that. So now what we're building is new neural circuits without
Mhm.
guilt, without punishing ourselves, without beating ourselves up. We're okay. So for after a week, I say, okay, did you put your shoes beside you on the floor? Yeah. Wow. That's
Mhm.
awesome. A victory. So let's applaud ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next week, can you put them on? Oh, I guess so. Oh, okay. So no, don't go running. Whatever you do, don't do that. But just put them on. Okay. So after a week, did you put your shoes on? Oh, yeah, that was easy. Wow, another victory. Okay. Next week, I'll speed this up a bit. We go to the front door and open it. That's all. But don't go for a run. Just go open the door. Yes, I can do that. The next week, we're going to walk to the to the road. Can you do that? Yes. And next week, then we can start a run to the end of the road, maybe a little bit further. So what we've done now is create a series of successive successes and
Mhm.
creating new neural circuits each week by making a progress. For example, in my morning exercises, the first exercise I do is just cat stretches. You know, when you're on your hands and knees and you just
Yeah.
stretch your back up and down. Oh, I can do that. But now I have done this for so many years that the next one just comes easy, and the next one, and then the harder one. And before you know it, I've finished my morning exercises. So the invitation is always to create successes of new neural circuits and repeat those often enough until they become pleasurable.
Wow. Wow. That is interesting, Richard. Lovely. So, before we wrap up, for those who are struggling to let go of behaviors or mindsets they have relied on for years, what are the first steps they can take toward building a new framework for success?
Yeah, I think we just went through that. So let me review.
Yeah.
First of all, you look at the behaviors you don't like, locate their positive intent. This is really important, and then ask how do how are better ways to fulfill that positive intent. Then start with just a small behavior change, one that's easy to do, and slowly increase it. And in the context of I am getting what I want, I am getting my positive intent.
Hmm. Lovely, lovely, Richard. And if our listeners want to connect with you, take some of the golden nuggets from your experiences and
Mhm.
your wisdom, how they can do that.
Well, I have a book, Private Conversation with Money. Excuse me. And that deals with our internal conflicts around money. And you can go to conversations.money and learn more there. Or if you want more on a behavioral issue, mindmuscles.com will give you access to a wider range of my writings and my thinking.
Great. We'll have all the details in the show notes for our listeners. And Richard, that was such an energetic and electric conversation we had today. Uh,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for sharing your journey and your expertise on breaking free from behaviors that no longer serve us. And it's absolutely clear that with the right mindset, tools and awareness, we all can move toward more intentional and fulfilling lives. So thank you so much once again for coming on the show.
Oh, this was my pleasure. You asked What I appreciate about you is you ask the really difficult questions that lead to a deeper conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
All
And
right.
listeners, if you are looking to take that first step toward change, you can refer the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to the Mindful Living podcast. Remember to be mindful, stay intentional, and live fully. See you next time.